Hi guys, this is Lurkin from Mobalytics. I'm going over my Frozen Orb build. I'm going to ramble about it for a bit, and then I'll kind of go over the planner, just pick my brain a little bit about it. So my gear, I'll go over that first. I have a Harlequin Crest. You need a Shaco to push. I got hardwalled around T80, T81 without Shaco and Starless, and then once I got these, I was able to bridge the gap, and the highest tier I've done is a 101. I'm trying a 104, but I think I need to finish masterworking my gear. I got really lucky with this. I happened to just get 3 cooldown reduction masterworks in one go. Next, you want a concentration chest because you're constantly casting ice blades. And, int max life armor. I opt for barrier gen because once the boss damage phases become 3, 4, 5 minutes, the stagger phases are less and less because after the third stagger, it takes 10 times as long to stagger for that fourth. So like you're realistically only going to see 4 staggers ever. So that's why crowd control damage has been completely removed from the build. Like the stagger mechanic is completely busted and it's only good for it's really good for nuking low level bosses that you can kill in 1 to 2 stagger phases. But once that goes out the window, it becomes useless because it's never up. I opt for a lucky hit chance to heal because I was running out of potions on the tankier bosses, just straight up running out of potions. So I needed some way to heal that wasn't just the flame shield heal. Um, you know, Frozen Orb, crit strike chance, attack speed, gloves. Ideally, you're going to want damage to close. That's because of the way that we fight the bosses and that we use the Verse Mastery passive. So you want damage to close, and then ideally you want barrier gen. But if you're low on tempers, you can just take a lucky hit chance to slow, freeze, or stun, or something like that. Like, don't break your item with thorns. Like, it's better off that you have the lucky hit chance to do something. Next, Tibalt's Will, that helps cap off our mana. And before Starless, you're going to want mana regen on your helmet and chest. There's just Starless eases the mana concerns. So next we have Asus. When we evade, we get 30% crit chance, and because of the way Conj Mastery grants us movement speed, when we have stacks, we can get up to like 22, 24% bonus on this without having to evade. So that's really nice. Next, you're going to want int vuln max life on a wand. You're going to want a wand. Dagger's fine, but the amulet uses lucky hit, so we take that. It's really important that you have the chance for Frozen Orb projectiles to cast twice. I'll sort of show you why when we get into the dungeon. And you're going to want at least 1 masterwork on here, preferably. I got lucky and got 2. Next, your focus. Your focus should be int, crit chance, and cooldown reduction. I bought this one off somebody for like 100 million, 150 million. So, if people are selling focuses right now for like 500 million with 2 GA, a billion for int and crit chance, nah. Maybe 500 million if it has GA cooldown. I digress. Same thing, damage to close, Frozen Orb projectiles. I'll go over the aspects in a second. The next is Tel Rasha. So you can either run Rasha, or you can run like a damage to close, resource gen, int, attack speed, crit chance. Ring, it's about a wash. They're about the same. I did some damage testing on Lilith. I think the Rasha is just easier to get, but like if you get a triple GA ring with like int, attack speed, and crit chance, like yeah, drop Rasha for that, and then you can run conceited there. I'll go over the aspects in a second. Next is Starless Skies. If you don't have this, you run Rasha with an accelerating ring, or conceited. You'll see. And then last is Fractured Winterglass Amulet. It's really important that when you get this amulet, it has a high chance on the cast for Frozen Orb, and it's the most important that it has 2 ranks to Conj Mastery. If it has 1 rank to Conj Mastery, it's not going to upgrade well. With 2 ranks to Conj Mastery, you just need to hit a single masterwork on the Conj thing, and you'll get to 3. But it's like almost impossible to get to. Like it's really hard to even. Yeah, basically you're hardwalled at 2 ranks to Conj Mastery if it starts with 1. You can't get 3. Ideally, you'd want this to be greater, like a greater Conj Mastery, greater affix, but good luck even get. It's hard to even get one to drop. So our aspects, as I said, were concentration. Our damage aspects are Storm Swell, Frozen Orbit, and then I take accelerating over conceited because I just like the attack speed. I think it's kind of the same because the attack speed's low right now with only it on the gloves. So you are getting like almost 25% more damage out of this, and then you're getting more conj stacks. You're getting more conjurations and stuff like that. I tried Ancient Flame, but I tried Ancient Flame Asus Ferocity, but Vers felt way better. just because of the close DR and because it's working with all the close damage tempers and because it's bugged right now. In that, close enemies take 15% increased damage from shock skills, and they deal less damage to you. So like you get a lot of DR from this, and our cold damage is working with the close. So that's why the whole build is structured around sitting on top of the boss and slamming them. So let's see, I'll put my Starless back on. We're gonna run this. But yeah, it's kind of up to you. If you're running Starless, Tal Rasha, you can run conceited or accelerating here. I prefer accelerating. And then, yeah, and do not run Shredding Blades. That's bugged right now. So let's get into it. I should probably do. Maybe I'll show you what like a T. I'll show you what like a T81 looks like. This is like the upper limit of like what I can farm, and we're not going to use Holy Bolts. We're going to use just a normal attack speed elixir so you can see like how the build actually plays. But when you are farming and playing, unless you're pushing the max roll leaderboard thing, you should be using Holy Bolts because it shreds the mobs and it'll give you a little bit of extra boss damage if mobs spawn. It's not the same procs that Necro get because it scales with attack power, and our attack power doesn't get that high. I'm going to turn down just the game volume just a little bit, just so we can make sure that I can hear myself. So yeah, the enchantments are Frozen Orb and Ice Blade enchant. And after I kill this pack, I'm going to sort of go over what it kind of looks like. So when you do a cast of Frozen Orb, the chance for that was either an enchant or the cast for projectile chances to hit twice. So 1 orb, 2 orb, 2 orb, 3 orb, 4 orbs. So 4 orbs is where you cap out, I believe. And that's basically the chance for Frozen Orb projectiles to cast twice. So you're casting 2 Frozen Orbs, and then each Frozen Orb is hitting the enchantment. So that's where that comes from. And then so that's hard capped at 4, I believe. I've never seen 5, and I've sat here and done this for a while. And then when we cast our skills, I'm trying to get we got 1 right there. So that's the Frozen Orb enchant. I really want to show it casting 2. I'll get this. Just bear with me. Maybe I can get 2 here. Yep, right there, 2. So when you cast a defensive skill, you can get 2 from it. So what I've noticed is the amulet spawns and the enchantment spawns can cast 2 because of the projectile chance. But the hard cast themselves are capped at 4. So that's why the projectile chance is so important. But so this is the build without any conditionals. Like I have no Hoarfrost, I have no anything like that. After this run, I'm going to go over my skill tree and the board. And like I said, pre-Shaco Starless, you're probably going to cap around a T80. Maybe a little bit higher if you like fully masterwork all your gear. Like my gear still isn't all fully masterwork. I see this build capping around a T105, something of that sort, like maybe a T10, a T110 tops. But like then it just becomes a masochistic effort to like try and find a good boss and then like and then try and have a perfect run where you're like on point for 6 minutes straight. Ice armoring when you're supposed to, flame shielding when you're supposed to, and it just becomes a nightmare. Yeah. But mobbing's pretty free. The only thing that'll mainly kill you is exploding pools. So one of the things here, I'll touch on it later again, but we opt for Ice Blade enchant over Firebolt enchant because as you can see, I'm not having any issues mobbing. The issues that I have are purely on boss damage. And the way it works is Ice Blade has a cap of 6, and I'll tell you how to get there. So when you hard cast Ice Blade, that counts. Basically you get 3 casted Ice Blades and 3 from the enchant, and hard casts and spawns from the amulet count as casts. So you can only get 3 Ice Blades out normally, but 6 when you have the enchantment, and you'll see it on the boss. And then that, like the meta right now for Sorc on on a lot of builds is the Ice Blade enchant, like even on Blizzard, because of what it allows you to do on the bosses with your cooldowns. So I can handle a Sea Hag, but... So basically you just sit here, cycle everything, and then Flame Shield the one-shot mechanics. Typically you want to save it for the Shade. Like right here. That's a double Shade and a boss mechanic. But like, in higher tier pits, like that right there where I just got hit, that could have just nuked me. And that's where it starts to get difficult. As you can see, we have more than 3 Ice Blades out on the boss. And the reason we don't need Firebolt enchant is because of this Summoned Hydra right here is providing me my burning. And we only need the burning on single target. So it's not smart to run Firebolt enchant in pit because you only need the burning on the boss, and because there's only one target most of the time, you just get it all from the Hydra. But these shades are a bit ridiculous. I'm really hoping this is a clean run. As you can see, this is a little bit higher of where I would typically farm. I usually like to farm about T71, T70. Because, you know, this boss is really sweaty and there's a high chance, there's a decent chance that I get nuked. So do not farm T80s. That's not what this build can do. I mean, it can. It's just like, if you catch yourself dying to the boss, then it's like you would have been better off just farming a lower tier. And you should play with damage numbers off, but I have to play with them when I film because people get mad. And there's the boss. Alright. So that's what it looks like. You just sit there, cycle all your stuff. You got 6 Ice Blades on the boss. That's the 3 extra Ice Blades adds 3 stacks to Conj Mastery, which is another 1.18x to it. Alright, so let's go over my skill tree. So with Shaco, you know, you get your 2 points in Firebolt to progress. 2 points in Firebolt to progress. We max out Frozen Orb, we take the Vuln node. We take this Elemental Dominance for 12% damage. You will have 1 point in Flame Shield when you're doing the non-Shaco version. But because once you have Shaco, you can just take it out. It's just 1 point in Teleport. And then you get the Shimmering for the 30% DR. We take Glass Cannon because we need the damage. We take Elemental Attunement because it's nice. And we do take Shimmering. That way we can... I wish they hadn't nerfed this. This used to be 2 seconds cooldown. But for every 50 mana we spend when Ice Armor is active, it reduces its cooldown. That's super nice. We get some mana regen here. So these are where we start to have some flex points. So these points right here are sort of where it gets flexible. Like we have 9 flex points right here. You can distribute them in Precision Magic so that you can get more Frozen Orb spawns. If you're having issues mobbing, you can take Hoarfrost, or if you're farming a tier where you're actually nuking the boss in their stagger, then you would take Hoarfrost. If you're having mana issues, you take Frigid Breeze. But for me, everything's all good for me. So I take Icy Veil, and then I'm almost considering taking Electrocution, but we'll see. It's kind of flexible. I float around what I take. You can even put more points into Teleport. It's super flexible. Like even Align the Elements is good, but I'll just put it back to what I have. We'll just slap it on Hoarfrost. So you do want the 3 points in Ice Blades, the Summon Ice Blades, so that it's reducing your cooldowns. 20% of enhanced Ice Blades cooldown reduction is applied to your other skills, and then it reduces its own cooldown a lot. We have the 6 points in Conj Mastery. You know, we get our Mana Shield so that we get 24% DR, and we got Protection so that we can get a Barrier. And as you can see, so what the Barrier gen does is, this is 6403 is what it's supposed to be, but when I proc this, 7280. So what Barrier Gen is doing, it's making my barriers bigger. Like Ice Armor is supposed to be 3342 at base, but just, well, I don't know, something's going on there. Anyways, I don't exactly know, but you saw it with the Ice Blade one. It went to 7280, and it was only supposed to go to 6403. So it's increased by your Barrier Gen. Icy Veil makes it so your barriers last longer, so that's really important because instead of 3 seconds, you know, they're going to last 3.75 seconds, something like that. I'm actually been throwing. Oh my god. I didn't have my burning on. So that took longer than it was supposed to be. So you're supposed to have the Summoned Hydra node here. That way it burns for an. So this is what gives us our burning. So those bosses like Hydra at base doesn't burn. Um, so you need this, the Summoned Hydra node, and then you'll get your burning, and that way the Flame Feeder glyph activates and the Devouring Blaze activates. So I'd say the max push setup is those 9 points I was talking about is actually 6, and it would be Icy Veil and Precision Magic. That's the setup that I have in the planner. So next we take Devouring Blaze. We get the burning from the Hydra and we get extra crit strike damage. And then I dropped Hoarfrost because, like I said, with the stagger with the boss, it's just not up a lot. So we take 3 points in Permafrost and 3 points in Icy Touch. And then we have our Unstable Currents, and we're basically taking it for attack speed. It just helps. It adds up over time. And then you could take Lightning Spear just for an extra conjuration and cooldown, but I don't know. I've just been preferring Unstable Currents. It helps you get through dense mob packs faster, and it's just extra damage on the boss. So this is a bit of a flex. I opted to drop the points in Lightning Spear because I didn't need the stuns, and it still provides vulnerable. Critical strikes apply vulnerable. I didn't really need the escalating chance. And I get all my vuln from Frozen Orb, so like, we're good. And then lastly is the Ver's Mastery passive. Close enemies take 15% increased damage. It's 20% increased close damage and 25% close DR. So that's why we've all been running Ver's. And if Ver's wasn't bugged, like if my frost damage wasn't getting this close, I would probably opt for Ancient Flame with Ancient Flame and Asu's Ferocity for the attack speed. But I've tried it and it feels great, but you get really squishy. And Avalanche isn't that good, mainly because I'm not exactly sure what damage it applies to, but it does proc quite a bit. But I think the issue becomes is I don't think you have your cast of this, but a lot of your Frozen Orbs are coming from the conjurations and doing damage. So it's not as much, it seems like you get 45% damage all the time, but it starts to get less and less as there's more Frozen Orbs coming from other parts of the build. To where I don't know if this affects the enchant and stuff like that. So I don't know. That's something to look into if they patch Veers. Shatter's out the window because it doesn't work on bosses. And I mean, maybe you could get maybe you could use it as a pseudo holy bolt on the bosses, but no. Basically, yeah, it's Asu's Ferocity or Avalanche if Ver's gets nuked. Alright, let's go into our Paragon. Make sure my head's not in the way. Alright, so we start off the board. I ended up grabbing a lot of max life because it just made a difference. There's times when I'm pushing where I mess up or, I get hit with a bunch of mechanics and then I end up with like a little bit of life left, so it's been saving me. But we take Reinforced, bumps our non-fizz and our all resist and gives us 15% barrier DR. We move into Enchantment Master, and I normally don't path this way, but I wanted more max life. That's 6% max life. So I grab this, I grab a little bit of non-fizz, and then I use Elementalist, and it wasn't worth it to grab this one down here. Next we path through Burning Instinct. I think this Elite DR is important. It just helps during the mobbing phase, and it helps when basically that way you're not worrying about the boss damaging you as much. You're worrying more about the shades damage. So this sort of eliminates you needing to flame shield when you're nuking the boss. And I actually opted for Tactician on here because I wanted burning DR against the bosses, and that's been working out pretty nice. And this is like the next best place to slot it. You can either be on the starter or on here, but it paths weird. All right, and next I do take Enchanter. I know people get weird about Enchanter, but I did some math and I had around 1,000 or 1,200% additive on this build. So like the non-fizz damage is another. It's another like 10% damage. So this you can consider this a multi, and then it takes my cold resist because I have 2 cold enchantments. It takes my cold resist to 80. So like if I do get a cold frost boss, they're really doing no damage. And it does help me max out my Frigid Fate because I needed to max out my Frigid Fate because I'm not taking cold damage tempers. Ideally, I'm just taking damage to close. So we path through this board, And we grab this DR Vuln. That's just nice for the bosses as well. And then my old boards, I'm sorry for changing them so much, but my old boards path through here, and I was grabbing all this DR chilled. I had reinforced on here, but the DR chilled, you can't chill the boss. And so it's either a boss, doesn't work. Unstoppable mobs, doesn't work. Or the enemies are frozen, and they're not hitting me. So like DR chilled functionally in endgame, like hard pushing, has no value. So we grab the Icefall. What sucks about Icefall is like it's only 15% damage. It's doubled if the enemy is also frozen. But like that's only active when the boss is staggered, and that's like it becomes less and less as you keep pushing. We'll go into Destruction on Ceaseless Conduit. You know, we're able to get 39 out of this for 150% crit strike damage, 1.12x multi. Next we take Exploit. You know, we get a little bit here, but I'm sort of running out of, I don't know. There's so much additive from the tempers that I do skimp on the nodes a little bit. But Exploit for 1.1x, and then I have Flame Feeder for 1.10x. So that's so funny that I just, well, as you can see, like even unoptimized, like I was able to take out that boss without any of my burning damage. Like I was missing a 1.1x multi, and I was missing a 1.21x multi. So like I was dealing 40% less damage-ish, 30-40% less damage than I was supposed to. So, and you know, we were still able to handle it. So that's sort of how like the build is. All right, I think next I'm gonna do a live 104 attempt. I'm just gonna show you how big of a slog it starts to become. And we're going to keep the, you know what? I don't even care. I'm putting on Holy Bolts just to show you. Like, I need it. I need it. So let's do a 104 attempt. And if I die at the boss, the video's over. Alright. So the enemies start to get quite tanky. But Holy Bolts helps eliminate some of those concerns. So this will be a better, once I'm fighting the boss, this will be a better depiction of how it goes. So yeah, as the enemies get tankier, Ice Blade enchant starts to grab way more value. I got it. So Holy Bolts will really, like if you're doing this mobbing without Holy Bolts, it feels really bad. It's just like, the Holy Bolts helps chunk down some of the elites as you're killing the trash. And like, but like, you know, if we get a bunch of mobs on the boss, our Holy Bolts is not proccing for 3/4 of the boss health. Like I've seen a Necro thing. They'll proc Holy Bolts and it's like a bunch of 14 billion damage ticks. But the scaling gets wild. Like, I don't know. Like a T106, T107, Holy Bolts will just absolutely nuke the boss. And then once you approach like higher tiers, like T125, like it'll start taking like a third of the boss's health. So it's just like the scaling is fucking ridiculous. But I know the max roll leaderboard doesn't have Holy Bolts, but like for Frozen Orb to compete. So the issue with not using Holy Bolts, it doesn't do much for the bossing. I'd much rather have an attack speed elixir on the boss, because like I think over time you're gonna get more value out of that. Because unless the boss spawns a ton of ads, then like yeah, Holy Bolts is good. But if I wasn't using Holy Bolts and I was trying this 104, I start to get towards like, you know, I'm not hitting the boss until like 7 minutes. But got my burning damage now. And this is just like sort of what it becomes, this slog, where I'm starting to get like tired of doing these runs, just like I got tired of AOZ. But yeah, all hail Holy Bolts. It's OP. But I tried a few runs without it, and yeah, I was able to reach the boss, but like I had like 7.5, 8 minutes left tops, because it's just, so yeah, you know, the build does have its issues, but I think the sentiment about Frozen Orb after the nerfs, with how it felt in the beginning, like the first few days of the season, people were really downtrodden about it. But I did my absolute best to like take this build from the graphs of death, the the depths of whatever. It was terrible. It was terrible, and now it's like passable. But still, you know, Firebolt's gonna be better. Blizzard's probably even gonna be better, but Frozen Orb feels better mobbing than it's just bossing. Because Frozen Orb's like more immediate damage and a ton of ticks because of all the mobs. But on single target, being able to stack up a ton of, you know, Ancient Flame attack speed, Blizzard's is super crazy. I think the issue with Blizzard on mobbing is that you don't proc Ancient Flame as much as you do on the boss. The boss is like, it's always up. But on mobs, you know, sometimes there's mobs that you're not killing as fast. Snakes can be a bit of an issue. And normally I'd be playing without damage numbers, like I've said, but people like to see them. So, but you'll get to see what my boss damage actually looks like with my actual burning damage on. So yeah, you know, the difference in time, you know, I can reach the boss in 5 minutes with Holy Bolts, and then it takes me an extra 2 or 3 without it. And that's sort of why Frozen Orb is starting to fall off. 1 second. Just because of just how long it's taking. Alright. Give me a good boss. Okay, this is actually the best boss. Now we just need a good shade. I kind of like to drag them into the top here. So, yep, boss is doing their mechanics. As you can see, it's just really slow damage. Even though we have like 10, 11 conjures out. Pop my flame shield too early. Might be dead here. But the idea is to just sit on the boss as close as possible. And you want a melee boss like this, because he does like no damage. And then you just cast your Frozen Orb on him, and then the explosion radius hits him. But yeah, as you can see, like second stagger, and I don't even have him do a 4th health. Like, it's just crazy. Ideally right now, because there's no mobs, I would want an attack speed elixir. I don't have any more though. So we're just going to keep the Holy Bolts on even though it's doing like nothing. And yeah, this is what pushing looks like. You just sit here and you just press all your buttons and you give yourself carpal tunnel. Alright. 1.5 minutes. So it's going to take me about 6 minutes to kill the boss. It would appear. Uh-oh. Oh, I could have just died so easily there. Yep. It's for, like, it's just this sort of stuff. Where, like, if you're not, you know, the boss fight is so long. If I'm not perfect, like the entire time, it just takes one slip up and you die. They need to nerf these bosses. Like, this is unreal. Like, you saw it. I have a triple, you know, I have a Shaco with yada yada yada. Double GA Starless on crit and core. Yep, and then I have to save my teleport here so I can get out. but the boss doesn't do much damage. It's the shade, and I think it's because I can't apply any conditionals to him. I can't damage him or do anything. I'm gonna flame shield this. So you can either teleport out of there or flame shield it. So it's just literally just the shade that kills me. Like it. Yeah, if you really you can save your flame shield for that, and you can get like a twofer. And then yeah, I just get nuked. All right, but you see, it's possible. The T104 is possible, and then you can probably get a little bit higher, but that's what it looks like. And now I don't really have time to go back and do it again. Like, you do that whole fight, and that's what the pushing runs look like. Yep. All right. Link will be in the description. Don't worry, I don't think I'm changing the board anymore. I've got this build where I want it. You know, I think it's good. All right. See you, folks.